In the shadowy corridors of hospitals across America, a silent killer lurked, hidden behind the white coat of a trusted healer. Dr. Michael Swango, a man who once harbored dreams of saving lives, would ultimately become one of the most notorious medical serial killers in history. Over the span of 2 decades, Swango exploited his position of authority to satisfy a disturbing obsession, leaving a trail of death and unanswered questions in his wake. But who was Dr. Michael Swango? How did a man entrusted with the well-being of others turn into a harbinger of death? In this episode, we explore the chilling case of the poisoning physician, a story that reveals the terrifying consequences when the very people we rely on to protect us become predators. Michael Joseph Swango was born on October 21, 1954, in Quincy, Illinois, a small, peaceful town that seemed far removed from the darkness that would later consume him. Swango was the middle child in a military family. His father was a career officer in the U.S. Army, a demanding and disciplined man whose absence during frequent deployments left a deep impact on young Michael. From an early age, Swango was seen as different from other children. He was quiet, introverted, and highly intelligent, but he also exhibited an unusual fascination with death and disaster. While most children his age were playing games or watching cartoons, Swango spent his time reading about violent crimes, plane crashes, and natural disasters. He collected newspaper clippings about fatal accidents and tragic events, an obsession that only deepened as he grew older. Despite these early warning signs, Swango's academic abilities were undeniable. He excelled in school, consistently earning top grades and eventually graduating as valedictorian of his high school class. His academic success earned him a place at Quincy University, where he majored in chemistry and biology, fields that allowed him to further explore his macabre interests under the guise of scientific curiosity. By all accounts, Swango was a model student, serious, driven, and meticulous in his studies. But beneath this facade, darker impulses were brewing. His fascination with death began to merge with a desire for control, a dangerous combination that would soon manifest in terrifying ways. After completing his undergraduate degree, Swango was accepted into Southern Illinois University School of Medicine, a prestigious institution that promised to fulfill his dream of becoming a doctor. But it was during his time in medical school that the first cracks in his carefully constructed persona began to appear. Fellow students and faculty members noticed that Swango's interests went beyond the normal bounds of medical education. He often volunteered for the most gruesome assignments, eagerly participating in autopsies and reveling in the details of traumatic injuries. His peers were unnerved by his fascination with violent deaths and his habit of discussing them in graphic detail. Some even recalled him bragging about his knowledge of poisons and how easily they could be used to kill without detection. More troubling, however, were the incidents that occurred during Swango's clinical rotations. Patients under his care frequently suffered unexpected complications, heart attacks, seizures, and other sudden medical emergencies that often proved fatal. While these incidents could have been dismissed as tragic coincidences, the frequency with which they occurred raised suspicions among those who worked with him. In one particularly alarming case, Swango was observed injecting a patient with an unknown substance just before the patient went into cardiac arrest. Despite these serious concerns, Southern Illinois University did not expel Swango. Instead, he was allowed to graduate in 1983, albeit with a recommendation that he be closely supervised during his internship. This decision would prove disastrous, as it allowed Swango to continue his deadly practices in the wider medical community. Upon graduation, Swango secured an internship at Ohio State University Medical Center, one of the top teaching hospitals in the country. Here, his actions became even more brazen. Patients who were in relatively stable condition suddenly began to deteriorate rapidly after being treated by Swango. Once again, many of them died under mysterious circumstances. One of the most disturbing cases involved a young woman named Cynthia McGee, who had been admitted to the hospital after a minor car accident. Cynthia was expected to make a full recovery, but after being assigned to Swango, her condition inexplicably worsened. She soon slipped into a coma and died. An autopsy later revealed that she had been injected with a lethal dose of potassium, which caused her heart to stop. But at the time, no connection was made to Swango, and her death was attributed to natural causes. As the deaths mounted, whispers began to spread among the hospital staff. Nurses and fellow doctors noticed that patients under Swango's care were more likely to experience sudden and unexplained medical emergencies. Some even joked darkly about the Swango syndrome, referring to the mysterious illnesses that seemed to follow him wherever he went. But these suspicions remained unvoiced to higher authorities, allowing Swango to continue his deadly work. Swango's ability to evade detection was aided by his meticulous attention to detail and his skill at manipulating those around him. He forged records, falsified resumes, and lied about his past to secure new positions at hospitals across the country. Each time he was confronted with suspicious behavior, he simply moved on to a new location, leaving a trail of death and destruction in his wake. In 1984, however, Swango's luck began to run out. After completing his internship at Ohio State, he returned to his hometown of Quincy, Illinois, where he took a job as an emergency medical technician. It was here that his disturbing behavior took a new form. Swango began poisoning his co-workers, lacing their food and drinks with ant poison and other toxic substances. His victims suffered severe nausea, vomiting, and other symptoms, but none of them died. The motive behind these poisonings remains unclear. Some believe that Swango was testing his methods, refining his techniques for future use. Others speculate that he was driven by a sadistic desire to inflict suffering on those around him. Whatever the reason, Swango's actions did not go unnoticed. After several co-workers fell ill, an investigation was launched, and Swango was arrested. In 1985, he was convicted of aggravated battery for poisoning his colleagues and sentenced to 5 years in prison. While in prison, Swango's obsession with death and control only deepened. He continued to study medicine, read about notorious serial killers, and fantasize about the power he wielded over life and death. Despite the severity of his crimes, Swango was released on parole after serving just 2 years of his sentence. Once free, he wasted no time in returning to the medical field. Using forged documents and falsified credentials, Swango secured a position as a physician at a Veterans Affairs hospital in Northport, New York. Once again, patients under his care began to die under mysterious circumstances. However, this time, Swango's actions did not go unnoticed. The hospital's administration grew suspicious of the sudden spike in deaths and began an internal investigation. Around the same time, the FBI had started investigating Swango for fraud, following reports of his forged documents and suspicious behavior. As the investigation unfolded, the true extent of Swango's crimes began to emerge. It was revealed that Swango had been responsible for a series of deaths stretching across multiple states and even overseas. His modus operandi involved administering lethal doses of various drugs, including potassium chloride and succinylcholine, to his patients. These substances, if administered in small amounts, could cause cardiac arrest or respiratory failure, leaving little trace of foul play. The full extent of Swango's crimes remains unknown, but it is believed that he may have killed up to 60 people during his career. His victims ranged from elderly patients in hospitals to otherwise healthy individuals who sought his care. Each death was a carefully calculated act, driven by Swango's need for control and his perverse fascination with death. In 1997, after years of evading justice, Swango was finally arrested while attempting to flee the country. He was apprehended at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, where authorities discovered that he had been planning to move to Saudi Arabia to continue practicing medicine. Swango was extradited to the United States, where he faced multiple charges, including murder, fraud, and falsification of documents. The case against Swango was overwhelming. The evidence showed a clear pattern of deliberate and calculated killings, carried out over the course of nearly 2 decades. In 2000, Swango was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, bringing an end to one of the most disturbing cases in medical history. Swango's arrest and conviction sent shockwaves through the medical community. His case exposed serious flaws in the system, including the lack of rigorous background checks for medical professionals and the failure of institutions to act on early warnings of suspicious behavior. For the families of Swango's victims, the trial provided a measure of justice, but it could never fully heal the wounds caused by his actions. The impact of his crimes continues to be felt to this day, as the case serves as a chilling reminder of the potential for evil that can exist even in those entrusted with the most sacred duty, the care of human life. The story of Michael Swango is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers posed by those who abuse their positions of trust and authority. Swango's ability to deceive his colleagues and patients, combined with the systemic failures of medical institutions, allowed him to commit heinous crimes over many years without detection. The case also highlights the importance of vigilance and accountability within the medical profession. The tragic deaths of Swango's victims could have been prevented if early warnings had been heeded and proper actions taken. The legacy of Michael Swango is one of betrayal, suffering, and loss, a dark chapter in the history of medicine that serves as a reminder of the critical need for oversight and integrity in the healthcare system. As we reflect on this chilling story, it's clear that the actions of one man, driven by a twisted obsession with death, had devastating consequences for countless individuals and families. Michael Swango's story is a somber warning of the potential for darkness that can lurk within those we trust with our lives. His name will forever be synonymous with the ultimate betrayal of the medical oath to do no harm. If you found this video informative, please like and subscribe to our channel. In our next episode, we'll explore the unsettling case of Dr. Linda Hazard, known as the starvation doctor, who used extreme fasting as a deadly form of treatment. You won't want to miss it, so be sure to tune in.